Welcome to the Longevity Optimization Podcast, where we discuss longevity, optimal health, nutrition, peak performance, cognitive excellence, and so much more. All right. So, Dr. K, it's a pleasure to have you here with me today.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming. Glad it wasn't too far of a drive.
Yeah, I'm very close. I love it.
I know. Well, it's exciting because you're in LA. I'm in LA. We're both obsessed with longevity, anti-aging, all things female. So we're going to get to be like real friends now.
I love it. I love it. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Today we're going to be talking about a variety of different things, but I'm excited about all of them. So you have a background in neuroscience. So I certainly want to cover the brain, and then we're going to go into some like compounds maybe for longevity, maybe even a little bit of skin stuff. I love that you have a very diverse area of interest when it comes to longevity.
Yeah, I love it all. I'm obsessed with everything, but my background is neuroscience. And for me, that is probably number one in terms of what I want to help prevent in terms of decline.
I love that. What made you interested in studying neuroscience to start?
It was honestly a windy road.
Mm-hmm.
I did grow up around scientists. My mom is a neuroscientist, my dad's a physicist, and my brother is actually now a physicist. But growing up, I was very rebellious, and I didn't want to do any of that. And I actually went into the visual arts.
Okay.
And was studying that. But then in college, I accidentally had a pretty intense psychedelic experience.
Okay.
And it just shifted my whole worldview. And I wanted to go into something that I knew was going to help other people. And to me, that was the health sciences. And I wanted to pick something that I thought was like the most interesting health science. And that was neuroscience.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I love that. So when it comes to the brain, are there differences between the male and female brain?
Yes, there definitely are. We have major differences beyond just like our sex organs in terms of the receptors that we have around the hippocampus and also the estrogen and progesterone that's available within the brain. Obviously, it's different within our bodies, but also that transfers to our brains. So we have different types of memories that we can form around our menstrual cycle. Certain things are more available to us. So for example, in our follicular phase, we have better spatial memory than around our luteal phase. And this also goes beyond to different types of cognitive functions. So women tend to be better at mnemonic functions, so things like words, verbal memory. It's obviously on average, everyone is their own unique person, but we definitely have differences beyond just our sexual organs.
And for anyone listening, what is spatial memory?
So spatial memory is the ability to navigate your way through a space. And this is done by the hippocampus. And it's your memory for turning left versus turning right. And also understanding globally, like if you're looking at space, like where's north, where's south.
Mm-hmm.
And that varies depending on our cycle.
Ah, interesting. Well, we just had a conversation about north versus south. So,
men also tend to be better at that than us. But we still can be good.
It's just not, I was telling you, it's like, I always tell my husband, like, I only have so much space in my brain, and I want it to be very, like, singular, maybe just multi-matter. I don't want, like, he's interested in so many different things, and I'm like, it's health or longevity, and it's marriage and being a wife, and those are, like, the two areas of my life that I'm interested in learning more. I feel like everything else just kind of, like, comes in, and then I let it leave, because I don't even want it to stay.
Yeah, same. I feel like I just don't have enough space for everything that I used to when I was younger. And so I've just focused on things that really make me happy, which is health, wellness, and longevity. And yeah, I push out everything else.
I love that. In terms of like brain health basics, because we live in a time, and actually like years ago, I kind of noticed this. I was like, we're so focused on what we see, right? Which there's no issues with that. And you and I are both obsessed with skin and anti-aging and all that stuff. But when I think about health, I always think about putting the brain first. How can we do that? What does kind of just like nutrition look like? What are some of the brain benefits of exercise? So that people, when they're dragging themselves to the gym and don't want to go, they can remember how amazing it is for their brain and their cognition.
Yeah, so I think one important fundamental of the brain that's useful to remember in terms of how everything in the body connects to your brain health is that 90% of the vessels in your brain are thinner than a strand of hair. So your brain is mostly these really tiny capillaries. And because they're so small, you are like walking on this tightrope of teeny tiny blood vessels that need to be extremely healthy in order for you to have great cognition now and throughout your life. And so to do that, it's really about helping your heart and helping your endothelial function. So at the gym, you really want to be pushing zone 2 and zone 5. These are heart rate zones, and it goes 1 through 5. 5 is the highest, so you're pushing yourself to the max. And zone 2 is pushing yourself on this edge of anaerobic versus aerobic. And these are sort of two different types of creating energy for output. And anaerobic is you don't have enough oxygen to make the ATP. So that's your zone 5. So you're pushing this type of anaerobic state. And aerobic is you do have enough oxygen. And that's your zone 2. And that's why in order to push your aerobic physical activity, you have to do zone 2 for a long period of time. That's why you hear those protocols where they're doing zone 2 for like an hour to 2 to 3 hours per week. So those two types of cardiac protocols are really good for brain health, as well as supplementing with omega-3s, specifically DHA, has been shown to reduce dementia risk, and supplementing it can also reduce some cognitive impairments. And in terms of nutrition, you really just want to stick to an anti-inflammatory diet, which sounds so broad, but, you know, non-processed foods, meats, veggies, yeah.
Do you eat meat?
I eat meat, yeah.
Okay.
I think meat is incredible for your health.
Okay, good. Talk a little bit more about it.
I mean, if you don't eat meat because you have moral issues, I understand that more than health issues. There's really no reason to think vegan is a healthy diet because it's not. I mean, eating meat, being an omnivore, is the healthiest diet. And meat has incredible benefits, not just in terms of these complex proteins, but also the phytonutrients within meat that help our muscles grow, which also helps our brain health and just helps your longevity overall. There's no question you should be eating meat if you care about your longevity.
I love to hear that. I have 2 grass-fed, grass-finished Wagyu ribeyes in the sous vide. I don't use a plastic bag, I'll be clear. I use like a silicone stasher bag. And it makes it easy, really, quick to do for me because it'll take like 30 seconds on the cast iron to just like sear it a little bit.
Amazing.
And dinner will be done in no time. So I love that.
I'm hungry now.
I'd love to come over for dinner sometime and I'll make that.
I love that.
Yeah. So what does a typical day of eating for you look like for either longevity or brain health? And let's probably assume that they're one and the same, right?
Yeah, they are. So typically in the morning, I like to eat something sweet in the morning, which is a problem if you don't want to eat sugar. So I like to stick with like a Greek yogurt. And then sometimes I'll put in a little bit of monk fruits with berries, and sometimes a little bit of almonds or nuts just to give it a little bit of heartiness and keep me throughout the day. If I skip breakfast, which sometimes I do, and have a big lunch, then I like to do like 3 to 4 eggs with something like broccolini or even spinach on the side, keeping it really like protein and veggie focused. And then dinner, I love a fish. So doing shrimp or salmon or even cod. And you can really alter the flavor profiles of those more than like a steak. And yeah, pairing that with asparagus or broccoli or any other veggie, salad on the side. Although salads, I get lazy. I feel like they're hard to make.
It does take a lot of work. I've been prepping. There's this amazing like CSA that does regenerative produce that delivers every Friday. It's called Flamingo Estates.
Oh, I love them.
It's amazing. Yeah, I'm obsessed.
They also have incredible candles. I don't know where you at in your candle journey, but they have great candles.
Yeah, no, so they do, and it's like on my list to like research deeper. Maybe you can just clarify this for me because I got rid of all candles completely. Haven't used them in a decade, but my husband loves smells. Like we had to go through all of his fragrances and stuff, and we got like healthier ones. So candles were a complete no-go, but this brand is very high quality. They very much so are into regeneration. So I have the rosemary one upstairs, and I'm just needing to research it a little bit more, but maybe you have.
I haven't yet. So I kind of like to tackle things one at a time. When I was younger, I was like not health conscious at all. I was like partying all the time, and it was really, it was a journey to become, where I am at today. So I like to tackle one thing at a time, and I haven't gotten to the scent yet. Although I will say I've started using cinnamon oil instead of perfume, and it's clean and smells good, and I highly recommend.
Love that. Well, I can also help expedite some of that stuff for you because, it wasn't an overnight journey for me either, but I have been doing this and been in this space for the last decade. So it's been like a slow build, right? It didn't go from 0 to hyperbaric chamber every day. It went from changing nutrition and then diet and then what does saunas do? And so, but definitely beauty products, all that stuff. Like it's just something that does take time. And I think that can be really daunting for people. But I think the EWG is a great resource for women looking to upgrade their products. And I love your approach though, doing one thing at a time, because I think that sometimes women are just too overwhelmed with all the things to do, and then maybe don't do anything. So I love that.
One thing I will say about the EWG that I find somewhat frustrating is that it doesn't always incorporate like the concentration parts per million or density of the particles within the studies that were harmful and within the compound or within the skincare product. Because if something is like 1/10 is harmful, I would consider that toxic within a product because you're using it all the time.
I agree.
But if it's 1/1000th, 1 in 100,000, it starts to get on the edge of like, is this meaningful? And I wish there was like a better discrepancy for that. But overall, like the fact that they're doing it at all is useful.
Yeah, I agree. No, that's a good point. I probably veer on the side of just like, I'll be like, okay, I'll just skip it totally unless it's something I really, really love,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that refinement in those types of apps is important. But the unfortunate thing is like you'll find a pretty good one, because there was an app I used to use like even before the EWG, and then they got purchased by like Johnson & Johnson. So it's like, okay, well, I can't take anything that you say seriously now because the rating system just changed and your products, so it's definitely difficult. But actually, it's a good segue. So what are some of the neurotoxins that we are encountering on a day-to-day basis?
Unfortunately, living in LA, a lot is in our air. And just being outside, even though there's so many incredible benefits to being outside, has a lot of pollutants that have been shown to be neurotoxic. But one thing that's interesting is that they did a study with your levels of omega-3s, and they found that people that lived in cities and had a high omega-3 index actually had lower cognitive decline compared to others within that same city. Also, people within those cities still had more cognitive decline than people, in more rural areas, but it still was able to buffer it a little bit, which I think is, it's better than nothing. In terms of other neurotoxic substances, I think the word neurotoxic is hard because it's like, does it mean that the neurons are dying? That takes a lot, and most things won't do that. But in terms of really harming neurons, anything that is inflammatory or releases inflammatory cytokines is going to have a negative impact on the networks that you need for cognitive function.
What do you feel like are outside of definitely the air? Probably tap water, right?
Yeah, so the microplastics is terrifying, and I think most of us have heard the statistics that 0.5% of your brain is microplastics, which is, absolutely scary. But
yes.
So in terms of getting a great filter for your tap water, I think you probably have an incredible recommendation.
Yes, I can drop a couple of recommendations in the show notes.
Yeah, is a great first step for that.
Do you think that things that we're using on a day-to-day basis, like personal care products or shampoos or fragrances, do we think that can pass the blood-brain barrier at some point? Or
so the unfortunate thing about getting older is that blood-brain barrier declines and it gets more and more leaky. And so as we get older, that barrier allows more and more stuff in. It's not going to be to the level that it's in your blood. So like a skincare product, many of those molecules do get into your blood, unfortunately. But luckily, the brain is still relatively protected. And there hasn't been much data to show that it's gone into the brain for any of those. Yeah.
How are the microplastics getting in there?
They're so small. So my hypothesis is they're so small that they're able to pass through by diffusion. But I think the reality is they're so much smaller than a lot of the molecules that we're traditionally thinking about in terms of health and bypassing these certain gates that it's a really scary new field that, there's still not much data on.
It is so scary. I saw that there was some figures going around essentially saying that microplastics and nanoplastics in the brain are accumulating at even a more rapid pace than other organs.
That would make sense because the brain is not as good at clearing things out. Part of that is most of the cells in the brain are, of course, neurons. Neurons are post-mitotic, meaning they can't divide anymore. So the neurons that you have now are the neurons you're keeping. And so in order to clear those out, you have to have really strong processes called autophagy. There's ways to stimulate that with fasting or with spermidine. But that would make sense considering the function of the brain compared to others. Like your liver is constantly regenerating. Like a hepatocyte is not a neuron. Hepatocytes are constantly regenerating and dividing off, and neurons stay the same. And so it's much more likely that they are going to accumulate negative toxic compounds, including these microplastics.
And the brain uses so much energy, right?
Yes. For the weight that it uses so much more ATP than any other organ. It's kind of incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi guys, I'm going to interrupt this episode for a brief announcement. As you may or may not know, I started a community for females by females, and it's a female longevity optimization community. This is a place that you can connect with like-minded women. We are all here to support each other, and there's a variety of different benefits to being a member. You get a monthly Ask Me Anything, so submit your questions and I'll answer them directly. We also have an entire library of courses on all of the important components of longevity, such as labs, nutrition, exercise, sleep optimization, longevity optimization protocols that I'm doing, along with real-time updates to my personal protocols. There are so many benefits of being a member of the community. We'll also be doing in-person live events here in California and virtual events for anyone that can't attend. But if you're interested in joining the community, I would absolutely love to see you there, and I will include a link in the show notes. Okay, so you talked about the blood-brain barrier. Can you tell the listeners what is the blood-brain barrier? How can it become permeable or leaky? And then what can we do to potentially improve the strength of the blood-brain barrier? Yeah,
so the blood-brain barrier is a complex kind of mini organ or structure or architecture that comprises of a few different cells, but the big ones are pericytes and endothelial cells. So endothelial cells are basically lining the blood vessels, and the pericytes are kind of like astrocytes, and they physically grab onto the endothelial cells and let things come in and out through a series of receptors and sort of gated channels that allow things to come out with a lock and key type mechanism with ligands and other receptor binding molecules. And this ends up degrading over time because these parasites lose their attachment to the endothelial cells. So they're physically lifting off of them. And so there's no more gatekeepers anymore. And more things can come through from the blood vessels to the brain. And I know I've already mentioned omega-3s, but those have been shown there's a DHA receptor on the pericyte that goes down as we age, and you can supplement that with omega-3s, and that can improve the pericyte binding as well as the blood-brain barrier.
Interesting. Is there any relationship between the gut, like a leaky gut, and a leaky brain?
So indirectly, yes. So it sounds like, how could those two be related? Because, leaky gut versus leaky brain, they're so far apart. But what the leaky gut allows for is a lot of inflammatory cytokines entering your bloodstream, which have a negative impact on pericytes. So pericytes are kind of like a type of astrocyte, which are these glia cells within the brain. And these are kind of like the brain's resident immune cells. So they're extremely responsive to inflammatory cytokines, and not in a good way. They tend to turn off their functions that are helpful and turn on more inflammatory and pro-cytokine molecular signatures and pathways. And so it's really sort of dialing down their function and dialing up this sort of vicious cycle of an inflammatory cascade.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I just feel like the gut is the foundation of health.
It's crazy. So the amount of data that's now coming out showing how much your gut contributes to your overall health is like every single organ, your brain, your skin, every organ you can think of is impacted by the microbiomes that live in your gut. Things that we wouldn't even previously consider ourselves as us, right? They're not eukaryotic cells, they're microbes, but they really play such a pivotal role. And now there's more data coming out showing that certain species are correlated with longevity. Like, have you heard of Akkermansia? Yeah.
I'm taking it right now.
Oh, you are? Okay. Yeah, so Akkermansia is a microbe that lives in the gut of centenarians or people that live for a very, very long time. And it's been shown to have cognitive benefits as well as just be associated with long lives and healthy lives.
I love that. It's interesting. So we do a lot of I've done a lot of gut testing personally, and we do a lot at my clinic. And so some of the labs that we run, it'll actually show, correlation between a variety of there's hundreds of different bacteria on this lab, and it'll show a lot of the negative correlations as well. Like if one strain is too high, it could be related with Alzheimer or Parkinson's or something of that nature. And I just think as we learn more about the microbiome, we're going to realize that so many of these symptoms or manifestations of disease could be very highly correlated with the gut, because we pretty much never see a great gut test. Like, it is so rare. And also, I had one of the best, probably the best gut test we've ever seen, right? Like, I did this amazing protocol, had great gut health. Then I got an explant and I had to take some antibiotics. And it was, of course I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I had to. So I was like, okay, well, let's make an experiment out of this. Let's see what happens. So I did a gut test before and then right after, and it is wild. Like, oh my God. I mean, some of the stats are insane. Like, taking one round of antibiotics can increase your risk of depression by 60%. It's wild. But to see the before and after was really eye-opening. And yeah, it just wiped out my good bacteria, allowed some of that, bad bacteria, we'll call it, to grow. And I'm on a whole new protocol now, and I'll be able to fix it. But the problem is if you don't know, you can't fix it.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, my opinion, and tell me if you think differently, based on what we see in the clinic, probiotics are not necessarily one size fits all, because I could have a significantly reduced good strain, and so I would have to target supplement with that, versus if you can have a different one, right? So it's really nice to know the data and then be able to target supplement.
So true. It's one of those things where personalized medicine is key, because what could help me could harm you, and vice versa. There was also, did you see or hear about this Mayo Clinic study with kids and antibiotics under one?
I didn't see the one under one.
So,
oh wait, actually I kind of did, but please refresh me.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure they were under one. But so basically they did this really long-term study. I think it was 10 or 15 years, following these kids that either got antibiotics under one because they had an infection or didn't. And they were able to show that having antibiotics under one increased the likelihood of obesity, ADHD, depression, many of these incredibly negative health outcomes that we're seeing more and more of today. And the craziest thing was they saw a dose response. So the more antibiotics they got, the more likely they were to develop obesity, ADHD, and depression.
I mean, I'm not surprised at all, because the gut literally is controlling so many things and impacting our hormones, our brain, everything. So I'm not surprised, but that's shocking. I read some stats too, and correct me if you've read otherwise, but that even just one dose of antibiotics, it can take over a year to repopulate that gut. So if you're on antibiotics, I had to take a round of, but then I'm being so aggressive with how I heal and optimize the gut again. But if you don't do that, it can take so long. And again, dose dependent. The more doses you take, the longer it takes for the microbiome to, come back to homeostasis or back to more of an optimal condition.
And a lot of the things that we're eating, if we're eating processed foods, if we're eating unhealthy, that's also destroying your gut. Yeah. So you've just wiped it out, and then you're degrading it little by little every day if you're eating unhealthy or you're not eating probiotics or prebiotic food. And so it's this sort of just torrential downpour of terrible gut health.
I know. It's so sad.
I know.
But I'm glad it's becoming more known.
Yes.
Okay, what do you think about alcohol in the brain?
It's terrible.
Yeah, okay, good.
Unfortunately, because I love a good martini, but there's no way on earth it's healthy for you. It's been shown to produce atrophy in the brain, which means it's shrinking your brain. It can increase mild cognitive impairment, increase the likelihood of dementia, increase blood-brain barrier leakiness. I could go on and on. It's just absolutely terrible for your brain.
Remember when in the health industry we used to try to make alcohol be healthy?
Yeah.
Because of resveratrol?
Well, I also think resveratrol is total BS.
I mean, it's been debunked completely. I'm not sure. ChatGPT still thinks it's
I know.
It's like, ChatGPT, get up to speed. This is like so old news. So resveratrol, no-go on longevity supplements. But also the comical part is like how much wine you would actually have to drink even to get a clinically significant dose of resveratrol.
You're basically a drunk at that point. You're just like
or dead, yeah. And it's like it's an insane amount of wine. So that's good to know. Brain healthy habits versus negative things that are impacting the brain.
Yeah, so I think one thing that is overlooked is walking is so beneficial for the brain, not just for cognitive decline, but also cognitive performance right now. So there's been a lot of studies that show walking and even sometimes cycling on a bike, if you're under a certain RPM, can improve ideation and creation. And they've been shown to have like 20 to 30 minutes of these small sort of quote unquote exercise bouts. They're not super intense. It's just going for a short walk or going for a light bike ride can help you come up with better ideas after. And so sort of leveraging that throughout your day, taking a walk as a break is a great way to improve your cognitive performance, and also your day will be better, I promise you.
No, do you think the mechanism is because of like the increased blood flow, or what do you think the mechanism
No,
is?
I don't think so, because there's not that much increased blood flow compared to because they did the comparison of an intense workout, like an intense run, and that didn't increase the ideation and creation because you're just tired.
Yeah.
So I think it has to do with this switching off of circuits that are sort of wiring constantly when your eyes are focused down, and you open up your peripheral vision and you're able to have, they call it sort of this default mode network turn on, and you're able to basically spread the activity of your brain throughout the brain instead of sort of the traditional circuits you're wiring while you're working, typing away at the computer.
I love that. So I agree. How many steps a day do you aim for?
Honestly, like 15 to 20,000.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I love taking walks like through here because it's kind of like zone 2 or like logs.
Yeah, you're in the hills.
Yeah.
Oh my God. See, I have to do zone 2 at the gym because I live in the flats.
Oh yeah.
And for me, the easiest way to hit zone 2 is a hill. But you're in the hills. You can hit it outside. That's amazing.
Yeah, come over. We'll do it's more challenging. Running is very challenging up here. I mean, sometimes I'm like, am I really out of shape, or like just these hills are like kicking your butt, and it's like super hot. So it's all that.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah. So, okay, like 15,000 steps. When it comes to your cardiovascular, like intentional cardio training, what are you doing per week? And is that delineated between like a VO2 max training and then general cardio?
Yeah. So honestly, I do 2 VO2 max trainings where I do 4 minutes all out sprint, 4 minutes of active rest, walking 4 times. And I do that twice a week. And I noticed that had a significant impact on my resting heart rate. And I'll do zone 2 on top of that. But the rest of my workouts is strength.
Love that. I mean, so many similarities. I'm doing the same thing. Sometimes I have a Carol bike too. So I'll do like one 4x4 VO2, and then the other day I'll do this, they call it like a rehit workout. I'll have to show you the bike. It's pretty cool. It's like an AI powered fitness bike.
So
cool. It pushes against you like to your max, so that you really are just like pushing yourself hard. So
that is so cool. So. Yeah, too, I want to get back into biking because I feel like it provides more thigh strength versus running. Like I noticed when I was in my SoulCycle era, I just had better thigh muscles than now that I'm in my running era.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. So you're doing that twice a day, you're doing the 15,000 steps, and then you are doing strength training how many times per week?
I'll do strength training 3 to 4 times a week, yeah. And honestly, so a big part of strength for me is improving my yoga practice. I love to do handstands and arm inversions, and that is like a big motivator for me. Obviously, health's a motivator, but when you have something that you're working towards, it's almost this extra level of motivation that I just absolutely love. And so I'll do anything from like weights to handstands against the wall, and sometimes I'll take a class, although I found those aren't as effective sometimes because you're doing these sort of medium weights for a longer period of time, which isn't as great for sort of gaining the most muscle or getting the most out of your session. But yeah, I would also sometimes throw in a Pilates class. I do like Pilates. I feel like it hits muscles that just doing weights doesn't. And yeah, I like to switch it up.
I like that. I've been thinking about doing Pilates.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I always see the Pilates line while I'm doing like weight training. And I'm like, I should do that one day. And then I like to be able to work out kind of like at my own schedule exactly.
Me too.
So then, you know, sometimes that doesn't work out. But I might try it soon. So
yeah.
That is fun. Okay, morning sun. You have a background in neuroscience. You got to talk to us about this.
Yeah, so morning sun is absolutely critical. And you will notice within 3 days that you're going to be able to rise more easily if you see the sun in the morning. And part of this has to do with the neurotransmitters that are going to be active while you see the sun. So when you get a certain amount of photons within your eye, it's able to sort of start to drive the circuits like cortisol, which sounds negative, but it is supposed to go up in the morning, as well as dopamine. It also helps regulate our estrogen throughout the day. So we have estrous cycles throughout the month, but we also have them throughout the day. And you want it to rise in the morning. And those circuits that are going to be wiring while you see the sun, it's going to help that hormonal shift as well.
I love that. I've been doing morning sun for quite a few years, but it's been fun to watch since my husband and I have been married. He used to go to bed much later than me. He would be up he would eat his last meal at like 10 p.m.
Oh my God.
Then it's completely different now. But he always struggled to go to sleep, right? Because he didn't have the morning sun as the practice and his just circadian rhythm was so off. Now we're doing that together and naturally, like you should be getting tired. Like I'm tired at 8:15.
Yeah.
And ready for bed. That's why I'm in bed by like 8:30. So now it's been such a blessing to watch him now actually get tired and be like, okay, I'm ready to go to bed at about the same time as me, like 8:15. So
yeah. I also used to have such a hard time going to sleep, and just my sleep cycle was so off. Part of it was sometimes I sleep in like blackout shades, and sometimes that almost would make it worse because I just would have no idea when the sun was rising.
Yeah.
And incorporating the morning sun, I've been doing it, past few years. It's absolutely a game changer. Like nothing has helped my sleep more than that.
I love that. Yeah, same. I mean, I'm so excited because my body just knows what time it is. So I don't use an alarm clock and I just wake up naturally, like pretty much same time every day and get tired at the same time every day.
Yeah.
And it's very nice. I also have, I showed you, but like the sun sets right here. So it was another reason why we got this place because we get evening sun viewing.
That's also amazing too because that helps your body recognize that it's also time to wind down. And it kind of also helps interact with if you see your screen after, if you see the low-hanging sun, it's going to help that blue light have less of an effect on your circadian system. So still don't want to see blue light, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah. I just switch all the lights at sunset to red. And there's actually, I didn't really watch television before my husband, but there's a filter. You can go into like accessibility and then filters, and you can turn the TV red too.
Oh, amazing.
It's pretty amazing. I do the thing on my phone too, like where 3 taps on the side, it's totally red. So yeah, we don't have too much blue light exposure, which is obviously, I feel like, been immensely helpful.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah. Okay, what else is great for the brain? Or maybe go into like some of the other benefits of exercise. We've been talking about that a bit.
Well, we haven't talked about sauna yet. Should we talk about sauna?
Yeah, we should definitely talk about sauna.
Yeah, so sauna use, it's kind of incredible. There was studies that showed after 4 times of use, you get a 67% reduction in dementia. And even with 2 to 3 times per week, you get like a 32%. So you really want to hit that 4 times of sauna use per week. But a 67% reduction is I mean, that's insane. There's no drug on the market that can do that. People would pay billions of dollars for this drug, and it's just doing the sauna 4 times a week. And there's sort of 2 mechanisms that I think people think how this is working or there's evidence for. One is through heat shock proteins. So heat shock proteins are these chaperone proteins, and chaperone proteins help proteins fold. And in neurodegenerative disorders, a big issue is protein misfolding. So A-beta plaques, tau tangles, even in Parkinson's, you have these alpha-synuclein plaques. Huntington's disease, you have plaques. So pretty much every neurodegenerative disease has plaques. And what these chaperone proteins do is they help the misfolding as well as help clearing them. So by driving the heat shock proteins in the sauna use, you're able to sort of jumpstart that machinery to help prevent those plaques from forming, as well as the vasculature. So improving your vasculature through sauna use because your blood is pumping, it's really hot. Mm-hmm. That has incredible benefits for the brain because you have mostly capillaries in the brain, which are teeny tiny and very subjective to any type of vascular decline.
I love that. And what is your current sauna protocol, or what's your recommended protocol?
Yeah, so 4 times a week. I like to do Sunday, Monday, and then Wednesday, Friday. But
how many minutes do you usually spend in there?
20 minutes, and sometimes 15. 15 to 20 is good, and you want it to be 170 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit.
What do you think about infrared saunas?
Infrared has been shown to have incredible benefits for your skin and your mitochondrial health, but a lot of them don't get hot enough. So if they get hot enough, yes, absolutely, but a lot of them don't get hot enough.
Would you define getting hot enough by profusely sweating, or only if you're hitting that 170
to 190? That's what all the research shows, and you got to go with that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I agree with you. All of the researches and these Finnish saunas, but I'm excited because I feel like if you're sweating, this is just casual conversation here. I feel like if you're sweating and you are super hot, mm-hmm. It should be having a pretty good benefit.
I think so too. So I think for the vasculature argument in terms of how that's helping your brain, I think you will still get those benefits.
Yeah.
But I think the heat shock protein needs to be active.
Yeah. We have Heavenly Heat saunas. I mean, I was telling you I chose them because, crazy as it is, sauna brands are putting these wood glues that are then, off-gassing VOCs into the sauna. So Heavenly Heat was made for people with chemical sensitivity. So there's no wood glues. There's no plywood, none of that. So we have a combo sauna, so traditional, and you can do traditional or you can do infrared. That's the one that's up there. And then I have just infrared with red light therapy built in my bedroom. So I'm excited to see the evolvement of sauna, but I agree. It's and for detoxification, I think it's so critical. It's unfortunate, but I feel like everybody needs to be saunaing these days.
Yeah. And hopefully, I think it is becoming more accessible. You can even get these sauna blankets, which are not as good as a traditional sauna, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And there's some of them are a few $100s, so it's really not that bad. And if you live in an apartment, you can use that. But I think with the infrared saunas, I'm hopeful that sort of the mechanics of that improve because infrared light has so many beneficial effects. And so if you could combine that, doing red light therapy and sauna, 2 for 1.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, I have one up there. I'll show it to you. What do you think about photobiomodulation for the brain? So I have a device called the V-Light, and it is literally intranasal photobiomodulation, and then through the skull also. What do you think about this?
So it's a budding field. It's really expanding. What type of light do they emit through the nose?
I'll have to find the exact wavelengths. I'll show it to you. But yeah, I have several of these devices, and most of them are just a helmet essentially. Mm-hmm. So it's I suppose, penetrating through the skull into the brain. And then, because one of them is neutronic, and then the other one, I'll show it to you.
They're kind of excited.
But yeah, it's literally up your nose. So I feel great when I do it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's I mean, now there's more, like the first studies were done in mice with Alzheimer's patients, and they showed that it helped with some of the plaques. Now that's expanded to retina, and now there's even been some human data showing that red light and the retina and other wavelengths of light can help with like glaucoma and other retinal diseases that involve like decline of the neurons there. So I think it's exciting, and it's also really cool because the brain's so hard. You know, you can't open it up and do surgery on it if something goes wrong. So we have to go through around these roundabout ways. And photobiomodulation is for sure going to be hopefully something in the future that we can all use and help with even neurodegenerative disease. Crossing our fingers.
I totally agree. Well, since we've mentioned Alzheimer's quite a bit, what is your take on the newfound discoveries of some of these studies not being?
It is, I mean, it's really depressing because it just makes the whole field look like a scam, because there's a problem in academic science where incentives are not necessarily aligned with what the public wants. So when you're an academic scientist, you want to publish, you want to get tenure, and to do that, you have to publish in these high-impact journals. And not everyone does this, of course. You know, most scientists are good, but I think it causes some people to push the boundaries. And that's why you end up seeing things like big Alzheimer's papers in Science being retracted because they faked data. And there needs to be, I honestly think it's a system problem. Of course, there's bad eggs and bad actors, but the incentives in academic science need to shift towards helping the public versus advancing your career.
Yeah. I mean, it's like heartbreaking. I don't know how else to put it, because so many resources and brilliant minds have gone into like this theory, right? And you can expand what was the theory, what's now like being called into question. Yeah,
so the theory was that these plaques cause Alzheimer's. So in Alzheimer's patients, you have these buildup of these A beta plaques, and it was thought that this caused a lot of the cognitive decline that we see. But there were some sort of caveats that started popping up, like, wait, elderly people without Alzheimer's also have these plaques, and they look totally fine and act totally fine, or are healthy aging, in quotes. And so it doesn't look like, at least in the human population, it's causal. And on top of this, people started doing more and more of these mouse models where they were artificially like driving these plaques, and just these really sort of contrived situations, and building drugs off those, which all failed and none of them worked. And so it's just clear we've come to a dead end. And then as we're reaching this dead end in the academic world, it comes out that the foundational papers for this, that these A beta plaques cause Alzheimer's, they faked their data. Those Western blots were faked. They made them up. They copy and pasted things that didn't need to be there, and they were retracted. And now we're here today after spending billions of dollars on this theory, and many people dying, and no drugs working. And it's just it's really sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I find Dr. Dale Bredesen's work really interesting, if you're familiar with it. But I mean, he has some great outcomes in terms of like reduction or reversal of symptoms. And it's really just basically functional medicine. It's like, why is the brain being harmed? Is it heavy metals? Is it like, is it, of course, the diet and the sleep and the exercise, all of that stuff together, but it's like figuring out exactly why. So I'm excited to see like where that goes, you know, because to me, it makes sense. Like if it works for every other organ in the body, like if you identify what's the dysbiosis or the problem in the gut, and then you treat that and you optimize it, then you feel better, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited too that we're now looking at it holistically and moving away from one pill to, you know, solve this problem, and saying, okay, we need to, you know, affect the gut and see how that is affecting things. We need to look at sleep. We need to look at exercise, because all of these can mitigate neurodegeneration.
Yeah. Was it also true that some of the drugs were actually removing the plaques, but they were still the same amount of symptoms?
Yeah, so I think it's called aducanumab. I always say that one wrong. But that was the antibody that bind to A beta plaques and was able to remove A beta plaques from the brain. You could see it in the blood. It was being pulled out, but there were no impacts on cognitive function. And even when that drug came to pass, many people on that panel quit because there was no indication that this was actually going to help Alzheimer's patients. And I think it was like $100,000 a year or something for this drug. So it's a really sad state of affairs, but more and more people are taking their health into their own hands, and you provide a lot of information that people can use so they can help mitigate their risk and really help reverse that decline or help prevent it from even happening, because honestly, we all just want to prevent it.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about the potential of hyperbaric oxygen therapy in the brain?
I don't know. To be honest, like I haven't seen enough data for me to say here nor there. What do you think about it?
I should connect you with my friend, Dr. Scott. So he's a physician, an MD, but he specializes in hyperbaric medicine. And actually, the first time I ever learned about hyperbaric was when I was studying under Dr. Daniel Amen. And he was using hyperbaric therapy to improve the brains of a lot of these like NFL athletes who had a lot of brain injuries that were visible on the SPECT scans. So, I mean, it's not a very accessible therapy right now, but I'm excited to see also where the research goes with that. I mean, I, anecdotally have great results. I mean, but my brain was already in a really good state. So I think the work of Dr. Amen, and that's just looking at activity and blood flow, though. So we know that it's definitely improving the blood flow, which then seems to, impact the brain in a positive way because it's, kind of like restoring activity essentially.
Yeah.
So, well, that'll be fun. You'll have to, I'll have to send you some studies as they come out because obviously I have a medical grade chamber up there. So now I'm like always getting the notifications on hyperbaric research. But I'm excited to see non-pharmacological like interventions for brain health. And as you said, prevention is just the best way to do it.
It's key. I think, we'll see about the hyperbaric oxygen. I think too, when you talked about the photobiomodulation, that is on the cusp. I think that will be the future. And also there's some emerging research with like transcranial magnetic stimulation. They've done some work with like addiction and stimulating the prefrontal cortex to reduce addiction risk or reduce relapse. And so if you could, hit a different part of the brain, like the hippocampus or memory formation regions within the cortex or facial recognition, then you could potentially improve those functions as well.
That makes a lot of sense. What do you think about some molecules? Well, before we move on to molecules, anything else that people should know, don't do for the brain?
Yeah, I mean, definitely try to reduce alcohol as much as you can. Ideally, none at all. Omega-3s, getting your exercise in, eating, mostly meat and vegetables. That's honestly going to get you places.
I would throw in there sleep too, right?
Sleep,
yes. The system that our brain does have to clear out that waste is most active at night, right?
Yes, definitely. And your lymphatic system really clears out while you're sleeping. And so you want to make sure you're trying to get, honestly, I like 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah, I sleep more than my husband too. I think women need more sleep.
I definitely think we do. There's been some studies that show we need like 30 minutes more, but I think it's like an hour.
I know. And I think it's even more so during specific phases, like during menstruation, I feel like I need even more. So yeah, I know I've seen some studies say like 11 minutes and some say like 20. It's like, okay, 11 minutes.
That's nothing. Yeah.
And so,
my fiance can survive on like 7.5 hours. And I'm like, I thrive on 8.5.
Yeah, I agree. I love more sleep too. Okay, so let's talk about some like exogenous molecules. So you mentioned spermidine. If you don't mind, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so spermidine is a natural polyamine that is terribly named.
Yeah.
But it's because they found it in sperm. And of course, a male found it. But they have these incredible properties. So what spermidine is able to do is it's able to promote autophagy. And autophagy is this clearing process. It's really important for cognitive function. And the only other way you can really stimulate it is maybe rapamycin or through fasting. And sometimes fasting can have negative consequences like muscle loss. It's also miserable. And so spermidine can promote this autophagy process within your brain and throughout your body. There's a lot of preclinical evidence showing that it can extend lifespan as well as cardiac health, immune health, and cognitive function. And now there's like 2 or 3 clinical trials showing that it improves distinction or like different types of cognitive performance in terms of verbal memory, as well as increasing blood flow to the hippocampus, increasing hippocampal thickness in terms of the white matter tracts and other regions of the brain. So it's a really, really promising supplement that I think is great for cognitive health.
I love that. Are you taking it just consistently?
Yeah.
I've taken it for a few years, but I seem to like kind of go on and off of it. Or like I was cycling a little bit, but you can just stay on it all the time.
Yeah, I take spermidine every day. I just launched a supplement. It has spermidine in it because I feel like it's just so important for cognitive health. And so many people don't know about it. Yeah. And it's just a really promising therapeutic in terms of preventing dementia and improving cognitive performance day to day. If I don't cycle it, I just take it every day.
I love that. I'm going to need to make sure. I'm on it now, but yeah, I need to like just not go off of it. I love that. I haven't really talked too much on socials about it just because I didn't with the name and the explanation. So yeah, maybe they just rename it or something.
I know. Yeah.
I like to, well, I was telling my husband, I was like, oh, I'm going to put this in my supplement. He's like, well, you're going to put what?
It's so bad. It needs to be changed.
Oh my gosh. Okay. What else? So we have the omegas, the spermidine, anything else that you love for brain health in terms of like supplementation?
I think also, so some types of spirulina have been shown to improve muscle performance, which is also really important for your brain. So if you can improve your muscle performance, you can improve your brain, as well as on that track, creatine really improves your muscle performance. And it now has been shown to improve some cognitive performance, including like TBI. It can help prevent some of the negative aspects of having a traumatic brain injury. Yeah.
I love that. If you wanted to like increase your dopamine, that you feel like you're a person that has low dopamine, what are some things that you would do maybe in general to better manage your neurotransmitters?
Morning sun. Then delay your coffee. Even if you can delay it by like 2 or 3 hours, you'll also just feel that coffee a lot more. You'll really enjoy it. You can also do coordinated motor activities. So coordinated motor activities require dopamine. So dopamine not only, governs our motivation, but it also governs our movement. And so if you can improve your movement through racket sports or through dance or through any complex movement that really requires you to be in tune with your body, that's going to help your dopamine process as well.
Love that. What about, are there any ways like you can boost your serotonin?
Yeah. So serotonin is this really complex molecule. Dopamine is so much more straightforward. We don't fully understand how serotonin improves mood, and we don't even understand fully how like SSRIs work.
Yeah.
So it's hard because too much serotonin can actually cause negative affect.
Yeah.
So in terms of improving serotonin, there's been studies that show it can coordinate with oxytocin. So if you can, which is sort of like a bonding molecule. And you can, if you increase your oxytocin levels through different bonding relationships, you can increase your serotonin as well.
I love that. Before I met my husband and was married, I was doing oxytocin trochees because I was not getting enough hugs. So if that's you, then maybe inquire about an oxytocin trochee. I think I had a nasal spray. You will like love all the things. I've had like the most absurd like different molecules. I love that. Anything else that you love or think people should consider? Of course, we always want people to consult with their doctors. Don't start taking any new supplements or do anything without reaching out to a doctor. But anything else you like love and that you found really helpful? Yeah.
So this one is like, I guess, somewhat controversial, but I started taking rapamycin for the first time about a year ago.
Okay.
And I was planning to sort of cycle it on for 1 month a quarter. Part of that was because there were some preclinical studies showing that you don't have to take it all the time. You can sort of cycle it on and off and still have the same benefits. And I did that, and it really kind of affected my period. Like my period was really heavy, and so I ended up going off it. When I got an injury, it's like a repetitive strain injury from pipetting, which is what we do in the lab. And it was really bad. Like, it was really debilitating. And I went to physical therapy, and then I was like, let me go back on rapamycin and see if this helps, because it's been shown to help with like some frozen shoulder stuff. And I was deep into Reddit forums, like looking at other people with injuries. And within 2 weeks, the injury was gone. And this was like debilitating. So I went back off it. I went back to work, and it came back like full force. And I went to physical therapy for like 3 months. Like, nothing was working. Wow. And I went to like tons and tons of sessions, spent so much money on physical therapy, went back on rapamycin. 2 weeks later, it's gone.
What do you think the mechanism there is with the healing?
So I think it has to do with the residual inflammatory cytokines that are not allowing it to heal. So rapamycin is this weird molecule because it's really like an immune modulator at the doses that you take for longevity. And it can really help with this like chronic low-grade inflammation that certain types of injuries are. So like an acute injury, this is not going to help. But I had this sort of repetitive strain injury where you just have these lingering inflammatory cytokines like associating and just destroying the tissue. And I mean, I was like amazed. I could not believe it, because
that is amazing.
It was just insane.
I've had some really quick recovery with a peptide called BPC.
I almost took that.
Yeah, 157. And then also PEMF is really like...
Oh, really?
Really, it's super interesting. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy because we have these two machines set up. And everyone that comes into the house, and again, this is just anecdotal, but they will feel the PEMF the most where they had an old injury or where they have a current history. Yeah. When I got an explant, I literally only felt it like on this like general area. It was crazy. So
crazy.
And yeah, my neighbor has a bunch of issues with her ankle, so I always have her come over and do PEMF, and she always feels better. So yeah, well, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to have to do like a part 2 on, we'll keep this brain stuff, and then we'll have to do a part 2 on skin and longevity and all the other supplements and things that we have as options here.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Thank you so much for coming. It was great.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Kayla Barnes, does not accept responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of the information contained herein. Opinions of their guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.